Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for our next GoAERO expert lecture. We'll get started in just a moment. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us for our next GoAERO expert lecture. As you know, we're so pleased to have our sponsors and supporters, including Boeing, NASA, RTX, Honeywell, Iridium, Global Aerospace, and SAFT, along with our more than 30 organizational partners around the world. We're so pleased to have Jay Stalnacker, the technical lead for XPRIZE Wildfire, here with us today. Jay has 25 years of experience providing government and private industry health, safety, disaster, and emergency management leadership. His experience in emergency and disaster management includes recently serving as Operations Branch Director for the Pacific Northwest Federal Type 1 Incident Management Team. The PNW2 is one of the only 8 federal teams that responds across the world for complex disaster management. Jay also provides crisis leadership support to C-suite level corporate executives. He has previously served in non-military government special operations as chief officer. Additionally, he was a member of the elite Federal Smokejumper Program and has served as a commissioned SWAT police officer, mountain search and rescue specialist, fire investigator, and nationally certified EMT and hazmat weapons of mass destruction operations first responder. He holds a bachelor's degree in organizational leadership from Colorado State University, and he is certified health and safety trainer in numerous professional disciplines and considered a subject matter expert for disaster incident management and investigation. We're so pleased to have you here today. Thanks so much, Jay, for joining us.
Well, thank you for that nice introduction, and I'm honored to be here in front of everybody to share some information that I thought might be valuable as the competition starts to roll out for GoAERO. So hopefully you can see my screen. How's
Perfect.
that look?
Looks great. Thank you.
Jay Stalnacker, thank you for this opportunity. Yeah, I am the technical lead for the XPRIZE Wildfire, and we'd love to talk to the group more about an opportunity on learning more about what we're doing. But let's focus on this competition and what I can do to help you. And that's my intent today. When I met Gwen and learned about the competition, this is not only a fascination of mine professionally but it's a personal goal to see technology improve the lives of first responders, which consequently improves the lives of everybody else we're trying to help. So I thought I'd take a spin on this from sort of a special operations search and rescue model. I could see some of the technologies being really relevant in this space. And so when I say special operations technology, it could be everything from your local volunteer fire department all the way through special forces where we're doing extrications and sometimes it's a recovery, sometimes it's a save, but in any case it's a busy workload with a lot of complexities to it. So and realize the end user of your product, a lot of times it may be a volunteer firefighter that has a full-time job as an accountant that may be either using and or exposed to your product or solution, and keep that in mind, the end user. Conversely, you may have somebody that is very knowledgeable about technology, and of course those people and groups present their own challenges, but I would just want to touch on that a little bit. So SAR is pretty simple. I'm sure everybody understands what it means and what it is, but let's define it a little bit in context of this conversation. It's about locating and recovering missing people. And like I said, sometimes it does go down a more dark road, but even the recovery of a deceased individual, for example, can make the difference to a family a great deal. And remember that sometimes there's wins and there's, let's not call them losses, but acceptable ends to the problem. And your technologies might be used for either one of those. And so think of that as you're developing and building this for who, again, your end user is and what purpose it might be. Um, you know, there are three types of SAR missions: land, water, and air. Each of them have their own unique challenges. I've done all three at once, and all three again bring a reason to dial in your technology, your solution, to serve in a multifaceted manner. Any tool, a technology tool. I was a former fire chief in Boulder, Colorado, and I know when somebody came to my office trying to sell me or present or demo a piece of technology, we got to know that it has multiple uses. It can be repurposed. It's easy to fix. It's easy to maintain, and not costly to upgrade. Remember, public government in particular, if that is your end state for sales or marketing, there's not a lot of money there. It's not like creating a new web app or iPhone app and cashing out. So create your technology that is scalable, that it recognizes these budget limitations and the end user skills. For search and rescue, there's numerous different agencies involved. Again, as I mentioned, it could be a local fire department, all the way to here in Colorado, for example, it's the county sheriff that has the statutory responsibility. So, know your end user and their customer and their liabilities and what they are charged with legally, because sometimes the use of technology is not possible because of regulatory standards or legal requirements. So, understanding the space you're entering, your customer, if you will, and their needs and limitations is critical. Military, law enforcement, of course, there's civilian search and rescue groups. And this is across the world. I'm not just talking in the United States here. This is across the world. The SAR community operates in a similar network. Something else I'll mention about the SAR resources in particular, whether it's a human being or a type of aircraft, I should say a kind of aircraft, is typing. So what I'm referring to is ICS, the Incident Command System. Your solution, if it's used in a SAR exercise and or a SAR mission, it's going to have to be typed. In other words, what is its capability? How many people can it lift? What's the weight capacity, fuel capacity, range? All those little details will end up getting it classified as a certain type of resource. For example, we have three different types of aircraft that we classify when we talk about helicopters: a Type 1 helicopter, a Sikorsky sky crane; a Type 3 helicopter, just a little recon ship. So each one has its own capabilities and potential, but understand that your solution is going to have to fall into this current resource categorization and typing. When you work outside of that, that's when we as public safety managers, search and rescue experts, we struggle to understand what the technology can bring to the table. Touched on a little bit of this with the land, sea, and air, but understand that, in this environment, and I think that the competition with GoAERO speaks well to this, your test will not be easy, and it's not meant to be. I was very encouraged to see that the test is going to be in difficult conditions, both terrain and weather and night and day. And this is what the environment we operate in, limited visibility, steep terrain, extreme weather conditions. You're going to have areas where communication's not going to work. I mean, even today, we have areas everywhere, Colorado, across the world, that, believe it or not, even satellites can't get us that direct link of communication. So solve that problem too. Think about how you're going to be able to operate your system, or it will operate with a very degraded communication system. Understand that in all public safety sort of roles in military special operations, there's limited resources. They're spread very thin. So you are filling a gap. If we can have an autonomous system, something that it takes only one person to operate, but takes the place of 8, 10, 12 rescuers, wow, think of the impact there. So, but understand you're coming into an environment where there's not a lot of readily available resources, including helicopters, airplanes, and people. In the SAR world, it includes dogs and horses, aircraft. I could go on and on, but you get the picture. They're not all easily accessible. In some cases, it could take days to get a resource to a search and rescue mission, because either it's being used and or it needs to get transported to the site. And then more to my heart, and as I opened with, the stress of being a search and rescue specialist, being on the ground, not finding people, children, adults, soldiers that are injured. All this weighs heavily on the first responder. And I bring this up because I want you to know that the work you're doing and what you could produce can help that problem. Removing us from the risk, removing us from the hazard, or at least minimizing it, is huge on our mental health and what it does for our community as rescuers and public safety providers. Some advancements that I think we're all familiar with, so I won't drone on about this, no pun intended, but obviously the use of UAVs. I could recall 10, 15 years ago starting to play with these things that somebody wanted to bring out to our rescue sites to do observations. And initially it wasn't much more than a thing, but today it's changed. I mean, with the thermal imagery, the GPS and mapping technologies, and the real-time data sharing, as pointed out in this slide, we are able to use these solutions instantaneously in the field. App-based tools that first responders can use. We talked about communication barriers. How about the tethered drones that could push out the communication across a vast area that typically would not have a communication network? So all these things are currently happening, right? But the edge of it, the cutting edge of it, is what you're working on: autonomy, beyond visual line of sight, things that we currently aren't doing but should be, is what's exciting to me. I'm sure you're all aware of this, but I just want to again touch on it. I started to go down that road a minute ago, and I spoke as a fire chief. Well, I say that because as in a leadership role within a public safety organization, whether it's SAR, fire, law enforcement, military, you have to make decisions based on budgets, decisions based on integrity. You want to know that your partner that you're partnering with for this technology is going to cover your back when there's problems. And you have to have contingencies. And so as you roll these technologies out and get them to market, one of the biggest first steps is what you're doing with the GoAERO competition, which is proving your technology. This is going to be invaluable in your conversations as you move this technology to the marketplace. So, with that said, understand that integration with existing systems is critical. What we can't afford to do, both time and money, is create a new system within what we're already doing. And yes, you can argue that we are antiquated. There are things that could be done better and quicker, but you can't bring it all to us at once. Prove to us that your idea, your solution works. Prove that it can integrate into our communication system, into our ICS, our incident command system, how we run these incidents and coordinate them, and it's going to be much more easily accepted. And again, I just talked about the operational challenges, but understand what an aviation asset does on search and rescue missions. Understand how it communicates with other aircraft and with the incident commander or the operations chief. All that is important as you build your technology so that it could seamlessly integrate into this environment, rather than us trying to figure out how to use it or how to integrate it. Logistics, do you have a battery powered solution? Do you need fuel? What is your flight time? What is your range? What is your kill switch options, or your lost communication options? All these are going to be very, very challenging. And I already mentioned the constraints and limitations of the public safety budgets. One thing we're seeing in our competition in XPRIZE is you know, a lot of the technologists and innovators haven't worked in this public safety space. They're not used to these constrained budgets. And so understand, as you build your technologies, they may not be affordable, and thus they will sit on a shelf, which is very unfortunate, but it happens. And then lastly, I did touch on the incident command system, resource allocation, personnel, equipment, all that. There is a system for it, and understand that system as you're building your technology so that it can easily integrate again into the current resource allocation. Make yourself a resource, not a liability to incident managers. We call it asset versus liability, right? You want to be an asset. Your solution needs to be an asset. It needs to be able to be integrated into the communication, into the operations seamlessly, so that we are always seeking using it. And when we don't have it, well, we're going to want it. That's truly success. I'll close out with just a couple things that are pretty obvious, and most of you have already known about this, but I have two examples here of what I would consider successes of technology in search and rescue. The first one is a bit old, 1982, but you know, the satellite SAR system, basically, you know, this is pretty basic technology under today's terms, but it was a game changer. You know, distress beacon signals and tracking and finding missing people. It's pretty significant. In fact, I was just with a group of peers, climbers, and one of them had a brand new little device, you know, that they could text their wife with and still get a satellite emergency message out. So it's even advancing that way. But that was one of the first big changes in SAR was, hey, we could use satellite imagery to maybe not only find them physically, but find them digitally. The next one was my favorite. I'll be honest with you. As a fire chief, we also had a medical role in our community, EMS role, and part of that was taking care of the elderly. And so, as we all know, that community is an at-risk community. And in particular, when you have members of that community with Alzheimer's or other mental illnesses, often we're out searching for them, both in the urban and rural environment, and it could take quite a bit of resources and time. Well, RICO had come up with a great idea where they could sew this transponder basically into ski boots, into someone's jacket, kids' tennis shoes, and then basically we could fly a drone or a helicopter above the area, the search area, and more or less locate the person. Amazing, simple technology. And that's how I'd like to close and open it up for some questions and conversation, is if you are building a solution and it's too complex for the end user, it's not going to be used. And so these simple solutions like the RICO solution to me is a good example of either repurposed technology or new technology that recognize that it has to be simple for the end user. And it has to be cost effective because the RICO system is cost effective for first responders and public safety. So just two examples there. I did write a couple articles over the years, and I did share one with the group here, the leadership group, I should say it. And if anybody's interested, I'd love to share it about a search and rescue mission I personally experienced. It's from a first-person perspective, and I'd like to share that. So we'll see if we can get that out to folks if that's an interest. And then lastly, you know, in conclusion, you know, this war room, you see AI generated. And if you noticed, most of my slides were AI generated because a lot of this is what we want to do. We want to change the culture of these organizations. That's a dangerous word in the public safety realm, changing culture to use technology. But ideally, you know, we will have this war room, this intel center where all these technologies converge with the field operators to provide them with easier, quicker, and more reliable and dependent information and resources and tools. And you, again, are at the tip of the spear of this effort. And I applaud you for that. And I'm honored and privileged to be part of that effort with you, and would offer myself up as a resource to each team as needed. And again, I'd like to open it up for some Q&A and also some follow-up.
Jay, thank you so much for that. Everyone on the webinar, please use the Q&A function in the Zoom to be able to post any questions that you might have for Jay or the GoAERO team. Jay, thanks so much again for such an interesting presentation. I wonder if there's anything that you might be able to share that you're learning from the current XPRIZE teams that are participating in the competition, and what you think the learnings are that perhaps might be particularly relevant as teams are developing their GoAERO devices as well.
Oh, geez, the lessons learned, huh? So many, but catching where your group is at in the competition sort of pathway, glide path, if you will. I would encourage innovators, competitors, teams, to really get the subject matter expertise in the field on their team. So, for example, in ours, it's about wildfire. So, one of the things that our judges identified in one of the first rounds of judging was the lack of fire management expertise within the technology group. So you could have the best AI, machine learning, robotics, aerial UAS team members, but you got to have the SAR guy or gal too, to provide that end user feedback.
Very interesting. I wonder also if you were mentioning resources previously about sort of understanding, those checklists, those materials that teams need to have on board, or what they need to be thinking about. Are there particular resources that you know of, or perhaps that you've discovered through this process of, XPRIZE wildfire teams building themselves, that perhaps you might be able to share, or that you might sort of ask our teams to sort of check out?
Yeah, I think again the understanding the National Incident Management System, it's called NIMS, and the ICS system, the Incident Command System, are pretty critical. Now, you don't have to be an expert in any of those areas, but understanding where and who you work for and with, and how you support them or how they support you, is only going to ensure success. So I would encourage folks to go down that pathway, and you could just Google a FEMA NIMS, NIMS, and that'll just take you on a pathway of learning that will help you with some of that information. And then additionally, getting on a SAR incident if possible, and seeing the operations real time, the pace of it, the ebbs and flows, the frustrations, is going to help a great deal.
Hmm. A question that we have coming in is, how do you currently use helicopters in a wildfire situation, and how could replacing helicopters with large drones perhaps benefit you?
Oh, well, the helicopter, the first use of helicopter on a wildfire was in 1960 by a Bell helicopter. That was a recon, and meaning reconnaissance flight. From there, it's gone up to, like I said earlier, now we're using sky cranes, being able to deliver 5,000 gallons of water or suppressant or retardant. So every aspect of wildfire management includes the use of aviation, specifically rotor wing aircraft, and we also use rotor wing aircraft to deliver firefighters to the fire ground, and we actually even, like in search and rescue, use repellers out of these helicopters. And I guess the second part of that question, if I could, I'm just looking at it here. Okay, it doesn't have to be a large drone, and it doesn't have to be a rotor wing or a fixed wing. What we're looking for is a solution that can provide the same capacity with less risk. And let me explain that. We've already lost 6 pilots this year in wildland firefighting, and that's just in the United States. If we go into Europe in the early spring, they had lost a few more. That needs to stop. So if your solution can replace a rotor winged aircraft and a pilot, you are solving a big piece of our problem, which is risk management on these incidents.
Yeah, it's a really excellent point there. How how do drones carry communications to an otherwise blind area? What technology does it use?
So that's it's a very good question because we're seeing this with our teams in our competition. Obviously, we have the same environmental conditions, degraded communication. So that is a hurdle that a lot of teams are working around right now. Right now, remember, if you're talking about current application in the SAR wildland public safety environment, we cannot necessarily fly beyond visual line of sight. We cannot necessarily fly autonomously. So the regulation is limiting even that development of that technology because the need isn't quite there yet. But the future of this competition and ours is that this will be autonomous. These systems will have to communicate in these degraded environments, and more importantly, they're going to have to detect and avoid. So there's two ways to look at detect and avoid. One is the aviation way. In other words, I detect another aerial vehicle and I avoid it using radar, using verbal communications, whatever. The other one that I would hope teams focus on when they're looking at comms communications is detect and avoid of obstacles. So remember the environment you're going to be working in: pipe tree canopies, congested urban areas with antennas and power poles and buildings. All this is going to be critical in the beyond visual line of sight autonomous navigation. So there are some new technologies and companies that are providing drop-in systems for detect and avoid in those scenarios. I'd be more than happy to pass that on to the teams, as they are great partners with our competition, and a lot of our teams are using that as technologies.
Let's see. Do you have a ballpark number for the costs of procuring and operating these various helicopter systems?
Oh boy.
That's quite expensive.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you from a professional experience. Our fire department, we wanted to bring a helicopter on for fire and search and rescue, right? Boulder County, Colorado, an affluent community, good tax base, right? So I'm trying to paint a picture here of the customer, if you will, which was us. We still had to go to the voters in the community and get a tax levy passed to support the operation of a helicopter, because it's not just the helicopter, the physical helicopter. It's all the maintenance, it's the pilots, it's the fuel. And so if you're asking for a number, think plus millions.
Hmm. Yeah. Let's see. And what is the ballpark range you require for most SAR operations vehicles?
So range, I assume you mean distance of travel. I'm going to tell you that it's so situational that I would, the easy answer might be oh, as far as you could go, but not really, because if you could go a shorter distance and carry a heavier load, then the
Hmm.
application may be more valuable in the scenario. So I wouldn't get caught up in like, oh, we need to go 300 miles in all directions or whatever. I would build your system to do a job, and that's what your competition, right? Your competition is your job. So build a system that's reliable and dependable to do that. And then again, the end user is not going to be frustrated saying, well, great, you could go 300 miles, but you can't bring anybody back because you have no battery life left. So if you are doing search and rescue and you're bringing a person back that needs help, build that system for that.
Hmm. Okay. Given your experience now with a number of XPRIZE teams, are there any just on the competition side, are there any tips that you might provide to our teams in terms of what they should think about, what they should consider, what they should make sure and risk mitigate for as they're developing their devices and as they're planning for building their devices?
So much, so much good, so much good. The two words you just mentioned, I'll start with risk management. So one thing that I would encourage teams here on the call to think about is risk. How do you define risk? What is risk? Is it business risk? Is it technology risk? what is the risk, and not only define it, but show your user, your end user, how you mitigated it, how you eliminated it. Ideally, in our scenarios, in SAR scenarios, wildfire scenarios, you're never going to make this a safe environment, 100% safe environment. So what we need to see is that you are considering risk and you understand your limitations and you have those contingencies and mitigations in place. So that's one aspect I would encourage you to work on. Another one is collaboration. We had a team tell us recently at a team summit, tell me personally, Jay, I know this is a competition, but to us, it's a collaboration. And that was beautiful, right? Because yes, I want to win the competition is what that individual was saying. But what in reality is he's saying is this is a community now that is growing and developing. This is a new industry. The future is unknown, but it's positive, and the people you are competing against and working with are your friends and collaborators, and they will be your business partners and your competitors. But right now is the time to build those relationships. So as you engage in GoAERO events, opportunities like today, use those opportunities to build your technology, to build your idea, to build your company.
That's such a great point. Yeah, absolutely. We would certainly encourage all of our teams to connect with each other, utilize the forum, utilize the opportunities, utilize the map to sort of see where all of the teams are located so that you're able to connect with each other either physically or obviously virtually, and see if there are ways, there are opportunities that you can exchange knowledge, exchange technologies, and see how you might work together, as Jay just mentioned. Jay, anything else you'd like to add? Any other comments or tips or anything like this that our team should be thinking about as they're working on their devices?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest challenges is regulatory barriers, right? We all know that in this space, right? And I will give kudos to the GoAERO team and obviously pat ourselves on the back because at XPRIZE, because we don't just work with technologists and focus on that. We have a huge effort undertaking in enhancing and modifying regulations with the FAA, with CASA, in our case in Australia. This takes political and social influence, and it takes partnerships to change these regulations that are holding these technologies back. So just know that joining different industry groups that are out there supporting new legislation or supporting regulatory change is critical to your success. So find those organizations and join them and participate to help make change, because it is your voice that is going to make the change that's necessary for us to use these technologies and be able to not have these regulatory barriers. With that said, I will say that the FAA, NASA, U.S. Fire Administration, and all your partners, Lockheed Martin, all these partners are on our side, and they're here to help us, and they're here to help you solve this problem. So don't get discouraged with this regulatory barriers or the cost barriers or any of those things, because we're going to help you get through it. We're going to help you succeed, because that's what we want. We need you to figure this out and solve these problems so that we can make a better future for all of us.
Such a great point. Thank you so much, Jay. And just as a reminder, of course, on our end, we are partnering with the FAA. They're big supporters, as Jay mentioned already, along with NASA. They are very much, as Jay just mentioned, right, they very much want all of our teams to succeed. So absolutely, and we will be supporting all of our teams with our FAA partners to ensure that you have everything that you need to be able to do all of your testing, to be able to push this new technology forward. So that's an excellent point, Jay. Thank you so much for that. If we don't have any more questions, I want to say thank you so much to Jay for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and all of the information that you've offered. And we will certainly follow up with you for the resources that you mentioned as well, so that we can share them with our teams going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Bye-bye.